Welcome to this dotCMS website training for an overview of how to use the WYSIWYG editor. For those of you who are not familiar with what a WYSIWYG editor is, that's what this particular content is that's at the top of this body field when you're creating content on your web page. This WYSIWYG editor will appear whenever you want to add content to a page, whether it's in an event content type, an article on a basic generic web page, for the instance of content generic like this content is. It'll translate across the entire dotCMS platform. So what I've done is actually copied and pasted in some text to get us started with the WYSIWYG editor, and I'm going to walk you through the two rows of content. So for example, what you'll see here with a lot of these symbols is things that, if you're not familiar with updating web pages, looks very familiar to what you've seen in Word at the top of the Word software. You'll notice you can cut, copy, paste. Paste is plain text. You can emphasize your text, bold, italics, underline, strike through. You can align your text. And then there's also bullet list and numbered list. And this is when I'm going to start talking to you a little bit about web accessibility, as that's part of the content generation side of things as well. There's things that when you're creating content on a page that needs to get formatted in a specific way for accessibility. So for example, I have 2 lines of content here that are considered part of a bullet list item. Now, often when we copy and paste something over from Word or PowerPoint or PDF, sometimes it'll bring over some special characters that had been formatted as bullet or ordered list in the original document. And I'm using this hyphen in this particular instance to take the place of what often would be a special character that comes through as a replacement for what was that bullet image that was used in that software. Now, if I'm someone who is navigating your website and I'm using a screen reader to do that because I can't see your website because I'm blind or I have some kind of visual impairment, then I need to have content formatted in such a way that I would be able to understand it, having a screen reader read it to me. Now, in this particular instance, if I don't do anything to this content and I leave it just as it is with this hyphen or what would be that special character, then what a screen reader is going to read is that special character. It'll have some kind of a name for whatever that symbol is, and then it would say this is a bullet list item. Now, if we actually format this properly using the WYSIWYG editor and this bullet list option, if I want to actually format it, I'm just going to click on this bullet list option, and you'll see here that there is now a bullet showing on the screen, and I can delete that special character and any extra spacing that went along with it. Now, if I have a screen reader read this content, what it's going to read is going to be bullet list. This is a bullet list item. And then it will be formatted properly for that specific person who's viewing your web page. All right, there's also the numbered list option. So if you're not using bullets and you want to use the 1, 2, 3, then you can click on this button. This particular increase and decrease indent can allow you to indent your content. So you can click the indent button there and it can indent it, or it can revert it back to what it was normally. And typically on web pages, you don't do a lot of indenting, but that option is available. All right, so on the second row of content, what we have here is this paragraph dropdown, and these are the different styles that are available to use in our dotCMS platform with our websites. We're using a specific targeted template, and so there's just a few different styles that we're able to use. And what you'll notice is that we're defaulting to the paragraph style. There's also address and pre, heading 3 and heading 4, and most often you would use paragraph, heading 3, and heading 4. Now let's say you do want to put a heading on the page. You just need to highlight that text, click into this drop down, and select for the main heading, heading 3. Now you might be wondering what happened to heading 1 and 2, and that's a very good question. Now when you're on a website, the name of the website is considered a heading level of 1. The title of that particular page is considered a heading level of 2, which means by the time you actually get down into the content within a page, that's where you get to the heading level of 3. And if you have someone who's navigating your website using that screen reader, it's going to read the page from the top to the bottom. So it's going to start with that heading 1, heading 2, and then get to that heading 3 once you get to the body content on the page. Now, sometimes people think, well, I like the way heading 4 looks better on the page. Heading 3 is just really big on there, so I'm going to select for heading 4. Well, if I'm someone using that screen reader, I'm going to do heading 1, heading 2, have those read to me, and then I'm going to get to heading 4, and I'm going to wonder what happened to the heading 3 in the hierarchy of things. So that's why it's very important that you use the headings in the order that they've been provided to you, so that if you use that heading 3 and you have content underneath that, that's part of what would be quote subheading, then you could select for that to be a heading level of 4. So for example, I'm going to type, oops, I'm going to type in subheading and highlight that. And then that would be considered a heading level of 4 under this heading 3 content. And that's how you insert those headings onto the page. Now this insert block quote, this is a new feature that's been added to our WYSIWYG editor. And what it does, and it's more applicable to things like an article, if you're creating an article, or things like a digital document, things where a quote would be within the content already that you might want to call out in such a way that it appears larger on the page and has more prominence. So that's what the purpose of an insert block quote button is for. So if you want to add something like that to your content, you need to put your cursor in the content where you would like that call out to appear, select the call out block quote button, and then it'll bring up the screen for you. And you could type in the name of your quote here. So this is just going to be sample quote. And you're going to want to type this in sentence format, so that should have punctuation. And then in terms of a citation, that would be the name of the person and or maybe their title, so that there's some frame of reference for that if that's something that's required. And I'm just going to type in James. You're going to click the OK button. Now you'll see here your sample quote, and the citation will appear centered and bigger and more prominent on the screen. There's an option here for clear formatting. So sometimes, like I mentioned, you will copy and paste content over from Word or PowerPoint or PDF, and it'll have way more formatting, and you'll know that it looks different than what this paragraph font is that's showing on the page, and you'll understand that it's brought over some formatting. So in those instances, you'll want to select whatever text has come through with that special formatting, and then you're going to click on that clear formatting button. Now nothing happened in this instance because it's already into that clear of the formatting that would be causing an issue. But if you had text that does have that, it will clear the formatting out for you. Now there's also this horizontal line, and there may be times when you're working on a web page where you want to break up the content on the page and have more of a visual cue of that breakup of content. So let's say, for example, after this, I want to break up this paragraph into 2, and I want to put a separate space in between these 2 paragraphs. Could be the difference between headings and whatnot, that kind of thing, wherever you might want that visual cue of separation. Then you can select this horizontal line, and now you just can barely see it on the screen. There's a very light horizontal line showing on the screen, and it will show up in the same kind of format on your published web page. Next is this table option, where you can actually click to insert a table within your content. So again, you want to put your cursor on the screen where you might like this table to appear, and you're going to select for the insert table option, and this will look like a lot like what you've seen in Word. You'd be able to select for how many rows and columns you might need for your content. And then what's very important here is that you select the top row of your table. This is again for accessibility purposes. You're gonna click again on this table option, and then you're gonna go to row and row properties. And what this is gonna do, under row type, you're gonna select for header and click OK. And what that's going to do is make the top row of this table considered a header row, and then everything else on this table will just be considered regular body text. And this will help for those folks that have some kind of a disability and are using assistive technology to navigate your content. This will read this content to them properly. It's important that you don't just emphasize things that are in a top row of a table, or that you don't just select text and decide that you would like that to be a heading and then make it bold, because in those instances, it's not actually formatted as an actual header. It's only emphasized, and in the code, it shows up as emphasized. And so the person using that screen reader isn't gonna understand something that's just been made bold versus it's more understandable to them to see something called a heading 3 as a style. So that's why it's very important that you use these styles within your content. All right, I'm going to eliminate some of this so that we can get it showing more on the screen. All right, so then next is special character. Now there may be times when you're trying to insert content that you need to use a special character. There's things in here like trademarks and copy marks, specific symbols that are related to equations. It also has in here different emphasis that you might have, that you might put over the top of somebody's name if it's from a different language, that kind of thing. That's what the special character option is for. Then there's this option to insert and edit link. So let's say, for example, you want to put in a hyperlink that's going to take someone to another website or to another web page, or even download a document to view related to content on the page. So to create a link, all you need to do is highlight some of the text that's already within your paragraph description of content on the page, and then you're going to click this Insert Edit Link option. Now it's very important that you use text that you already have that's formatted, basic body text within your document when you're creating a hyperlink, because you want your links to be what's considered a descriptive hyperlink, i.e. when you're creating content and you're directing people to another website, you don't want to do something where you type in visit : and then you expose a web address, like maybe what we have at the top of the screen here. If I'm using a screen reader to read this particular web page to me, and I happen to see visit : and then I get to cnr.edu/.capital A/DMIN/#/edit/paid yada 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 %2 F demo %F training. It's not very understandable what that link is actually for. But if we use content that's already within the structure of a sentence or within a paragraph, then it makes it easier for us to understand what that link might be related to. And you might say something like, you know, download form, or you might actually have the name of the organization be within that sentence of text, like say, College of Ag and Natural Resources, and that's what you're going to link to is the College of Ag and Natural Resources website. So you would highlight that text and then link directly to that website. All right, so once you have highlighted the text that you would like to create a hyperlink for, you're going to click on that Insert Link button. It's going to bring up this Insert Link window, and you'll have two options in the first field. One, you can copy and paste a web address directly into this field. Can be within your website, can be from another website, or there's also this option here to use a document that you've uploaded to your website that they would then download. So for our first example, I'm just going to copy this. Let's say it's for a particular web page that we want to direct somebody to. You're going to copy it and you're going to paste it in here, and that's as simple as what that needs to be. Now let's say, for example, you want to actually do option B, and that's to link to a document that they're going to download. If you're going to do that, you're going to select this folder with the spyglass image. This is going to bring up the select a file window. You're going to click on the plus symbol next to cinr.msu.edu, navigate to your website folder and your uploads folder, and go to your files folder. Now this is where different documents have been already uploaded to your site, or you can also upload a file directly from your computer. Now let's say for this example that we just want to use one of the documents that's already showing. So I'm going to select my test document here. And you'll notice that this URL field starts to populate with some of the information related to that PDF document. Now the last field that's important to fill out is going to be this title field. Now when you go to a particular website and you hover over what is considered a link on the page, you're going to see this text that shows up in this little square. Now this says National Charette Institute website. Now this is what's known as hover text. And this helps folks, whether they have a disability or not, to know where they're actually going to be taken when they click on this particular link. So it's very important that you give some frame of reference, whether you're taking someone to another web page or another website, or whether you're having them download a document. And in the case of a document, it's good to have the name of the document. So for example, it could be October meeting minutes, it could be planning report, it could be Apple's white paper, you know, that kind of thing. Something that's more descriptive for them to understand what it is they're going to be clicking on. So for my particular example, it's a test document. So I'm just going to type out test document. And then that would give them a frame of reference for what they're going to be downloading. And then you can click OK. And now you have your link showing up on the page, and you see if you hover your cursor over it, then that hover text is also showing. Now if for some reason you've inserted a link and you don't want it on the page anymore, you can click the remove link button and that will take it away. There's also an option here for an anchor. Now an anchor tag is not something that's typically used with web pages unless you have a very long web page that has a lot of content on it that you're scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and you want people to find specific targeted content on that page. Now an example of that, let me show you. At the top of pages that tend to have anchor tags, you'll see typically a bullet list at the top, and there'll be what would normally be something that we would consider a header, heading that would jump you down to specific content on the page. So if I want to see these recent practicum projects, I'm going to click on that and it's going to jump me down onto the page where this content is located. And you'll notice by the scroll bar that we're about halfway down on the content on the page. And when we scroll back up, you'll see that there is quite a bit of content that was already showing. So let's say, for example, you would like to create a couple of anchor tags, one for your heading and one for your subheading. All you would need to do is make room at the top of your document for your bullet list. I'm going to do a hard return, make that heading text, turn that into a paragraph, put my bullet cursor on the screen where I want that bullet to be, get prepared for my bullet list. Then for this first heading, I'm going to put my cursor right at the beginning of that text, and I'm going to click the anchor tag. And for this, I'm just going to put in heading. Typically, an anchor tag is something really short. It's like one, maybe two words, could even be an acronym, and there's no spaces in this content for an anchor tag. And you're going to click the OK button, and now you're going to see this little anchor symbol that shows up here, and I can actually click on that to get back in there if I need to make any changes to that. Now let's say we want this subheading to also be added to this anchor list. So I'm going to click on the anchor button again with my cursor down there, and I'm going to call this one sub. I'm going to click the OK button. And now I've got an anchor for that. And now I need to create my links at the top so that we can actually get to this content to be jumped down on the page. And so in that case, I'm going to type in heading, and then do a hard return and type in subheading. I'm going to put a period at the end of my bullet list, again for accessibility. I'm going to highlight my heading text, and I'm going to click on this Insert Edit Link button again. Now, what we didn't see before is this field called anchors. Now, when we click on anchors, we're going to see that we now have our two anchor tags showing, and I can click on my heading, and it's going to pop my anchor up into the URL field, and then I'm going to click into the title field and type in heading again because that's what the name of this particular heading was called. And now I've got my link made, and I'm going to do the same thing for the subheading. Click on the Insert Edit Link, click on Anchors, click on Subheading, type in my subheading for my title, and click the OK. And that's how you create an anchor and its related bullet list. Next is an option to insert or edit an image onto the page. So in this particular instance, let's say we want to add an image to the page. And we want it to be towards the top. So we're going to create some extra space here. I'm going to put my cursor where I want that image to appear. And I'm going to click on this Insert Edit Image button. Now, the only option that you have with an image is to upload it to your website files, and then you would be able to add it to your content. So we're going to click on Folder with the spyglass. It's going to bring us to the Select a File window. I'm going to click on the plus symbol, click into my website folder, click into my Uploads folder, and get to my Images folder. Now, I've got a few images here, but in this particular example, we're going to assume that you don't have the photo that you would like already showing, so you're going to upload a new file. And to do that, you're going to select Files to Upload. And it's just taking a little moment to load. And it's brought me to my website files. And then once I get to my content, I can select for it and click the Open button. And now my content is showing here on the screen, and I need to take an action to actually get the content onto the site. So I need to do Save and Publish, and then select the Execute button. So one of the issues that is a known bug in the dotCMS system is related to editing photos or images on your website using the Chrome browser. We've been told that we should be using the Chrome browser as our default browser for dotCMS updating. The backup browser is Firefox. These are the least two buggy browsers. Firefox does have a few more bugs in the system, but it allows for images to be editable, clickable, and editable within the system. Now you can upload images without any issues into dotCMS. It's just if you click away from those images that there is, you're not able to select for that particular image again to edit it. So in those instances, if you need to edit an image on the page, let's say you want to resize it or whatnot, you will need to log into Firefox and then navigate to where that content lives, and then you'll be able to edit it from there by clicking on it. In just a moment, I will show you why you can't do that in Chrome. Once your image is actually uploaded into the system, it should pop up in this upper left-hand corner. Now, some of the websites have multiple images that have been uploaded onto them, and so it can take a little bit for the loading of the page with all of this content. Sometimes, because you have that much content in there, your image doesn't just pop up in this upper left-hand corner, in which case you can put your cursor in the filter field and type in the first couple of letters of that file name that you just uploaded for that file to be able to find and select for it. Once you select it, it will show the content within the source. It will auto-populate this image description with the file name for your particular image. Now, this image description field is extremely important as it's related to someone who's using a screen reader to view your, navigate your site and to read the site to them. You're going to want to put some kind of description in here that's going to be understandable to them rather than something that includes a bunch of acronyms and a series of numbers. So in this particular instance, I'm going to type in cyclists riding set, and I'm going to include a period in there for punctuation. And then you'll notice that the dimensions for this particular image are quite large, 4,200 by about 2,800 pixels. And typically when you're uploading an image to your page, you might have a max of 600 to 800 pixels for your dimensions. So for something that I might want to wrap with a specific paragraph on my content, I might want it to be less than that. So you can upload your images at their original file size, and then with this dimensions field, you can resize it down to a smaller dimension. So for my purposes, I'm going to type in 200. It's going to default to 300 and it default to 200 with constrained proportions. Now there is an option here to include a caption. And if you want to use that, you just need to type in your caption. So that might be cyclists. You don't have to include a caption with your content. It's only if this is something that you want to do. And when you insert this, it's going to have this text actually be visible underneath the symbol, this image, which is what's considered a caption. Now, alignment, you might want to align it left or alignment right. So I'm just going to select left in this instance and click the insert button. Now you'll see here that it's wrapped the text on the page around this particular image. My caption is showing up underneath. And what's extremely important, especially if you want to edit this image, is the fact that it's highlighted blue and that there's these little radial buttons that you could select for on this particular image. Now this is something that if in Chrome you click away from this image, you won't actually be able to get back to what is the content related to this image. And you'll notice that this image button is still highlighted because this image on the screen is still blue and has those radial buttons showing. Now if I click on it, I can still access my content here, make additional edits as I might need to. I might want to resize this to a larger size, let's say 400. Constrained proportions is selected. I'm going to click OK again. And you're going to notice once I clicked that OK button, it took away my blue highlight with my radial buttons. And if I try clicking on this image, I'm clicking on it. You can hear my mouse with the click button. Nothing's happening. I can't select it. So this is where I was talking about the instance where you need to go into Firefox as your backup dotCMS browser, log into the system, navigate to where this page exists, and then if you need to make additional edits to this particular content, you can do so by selecting it in the Firefox browser. All right, let's say you want to insert a YouTube video on your page, and this will actually embed the video on your page. And I'm going to put this content before my subheading here. Click on the insert, and then for the YouTube video, you would type in the video web address or whatever code has been provided to you by YouTube. And then you also want to select Make Responsive. Now what's important about this Make Responsive button is it won't, what it's going to do is make your video adjust itself depending on what type of monitor or browser or device you're using. So if you're using your laptop like I am, it's going to adjust it so I can see the full video within my browser screen. If I'm using a television monitor or something like that, that often is in meeting spaces, then it would adjust it accordingly for that. Or if I'm using my cell phone, it will adjust it so that it will fit appropriately into my cell phone window. So that's why it's important to check that Make Responsive box. And then once you have that web address or code in there, then you can click the OK button and it will embed that video for you onto the page. There's also an option here for source code. Now, let's say you need to make some changes in the source code. Maybe you happen to know a little bit of coding and reading a web page, then you can go in here and see what's been inserted in here. Or let's say, for example, you want to insert code for a video that's not a YouTube video. Could be Vimeo, could be from MediaSpace, and there will be code that's been provided from those platforms so that you can actually embed it within the code on your page. And you would be able to navigate to that particular spot on the page, do a hard return, and then paste in that particular code for that video. And that takes us through the WYSIWYG editor.